So exploring subreddits on free speech and censorship, there are people actively advocating on these specific subreddits for greater amounts of censorship by YouTube specifically, stating that they should eliminate any discussion of climate change. That means that we all have to fit down a very narrow path, down the narrative road that is imposed upon us by the powers that be that tell us exactly how to think. Free speech of all types is incredibly important. Can it be messy? Of course it can. But the alternative is far worse than allowing free speech to exist. You see, society can solve its differences in two ways. One, discussion and negotiation. Secondly, violence. As I think the majority of us find one preferable to another, let's all agree that free speech is an absolute necessity and the mechanism by which we settle our differences peacefully. Is there speech that I disagree with? Yeah. Is there such a thing as hate speech? I think we can all agree that there certainly is. But I definitely am not going to allow those who are chomping at the bit, raising their hands, volunteering to be the arbiters of what constitutes hate speech. They are not going to be allowed in the driver's seat. These are the same people that claim that silence is violence. And at the same time, speech that they disagree with, well, that's also violence.
The conversation that you're having is oppressive.
So I am oppressing people by what I'm doing. So I am exerting violence on people by my speech. That's what the sign says, and that's what you just said.
It contributes to.
And the protester is saying that's exactly what I'm doing, and she's saying that's exactly what her sign means. So that means that you, a faculty member at an American public university, paid for by taxpayer dollars, are conflating speech with violence.
Yes. Speech can be violent. What you are saying contributes to systemic racism in this country.
Basically, anything that doesn't fit their specific narrative is beyond the pale and a reason to potentially lock you up for your hatred, for the enmity in your heart, or at least minimum to cancel you out of your profession, from your friends. There has to be a very hard and fast rule, never to give 1 inch to these people.
Speech can be violent. What you are saying contributes to systemic racism in this country.
Because they will keep yammering and pushing for greater amounts of control over speech, over our lives, over what they consider to be morality. Then you have the public square argument. The internet has, for all intents and purposes, become the new digital public square, where you will reach the greatest numbers of people on certain platforms that really are more publishers today because they are deciding and arbitrating on what content is allowable for others to view. Take, for example, the lab leak theory, which for reasons that many of you guys can probably surmise, was prevented from being discussed on the various social media platforms until the evidence became so overwhelming that they were forced to change their stance. Still today, you question the vaccine, your comments get suppressed, your channel on YouTube gets axed, or your account banned on other platforms. And right now, YouTube and others will not allow you to discuss the possibility that ivermectin might be positive. And I'm not making any such claims in the case of COVIDia. The point is that they're preventing and stifling discussion of this. All those people that purport to know the facts because the New York Times stated it to be so, and the circular fact-checking apparatus set up by the social media companies who use the New York Times and Washington Post as the gospel truth, unbiased sources that never get anything wrong. And these statements are then repeated verbatim by the other media companies that might be of a lower tier, but of course are incorporated into the algorithm to determine what is factual. So the New York Times says it, it's disseminated out, it's repeated, and the echo chamber is then picked up by the algorithm and determining what is true and what is fact-checked and what is not. To demonstrate the power that the New York Times has in today's brave new world, you can, with evidence, accuse the editor, Dean Baquet, of murder, and he will type out in his paper and print it for all to see, innocent, he yells. It gets posted on the net. It echoes through the chamber that they've developed, determined to be true by the algorithm. And anybody on social media who then declares Dean Baquet possibly guilty will be fact-checked and their posts demoted and stated to be untrue. All the meanwhile, you completely ignore the dead body in his basement. And the point of bringing this up is that the current Ministry of Truth shades and greatly affects what people believe. Do people lie? Yes. Do people manipulate? Yes. And this should all be allowed under the umbrella of free speech, because anyone that is okay with giving the fact checks over to the SJWs to allow them to determine what we can and cannot say, what is and isn't true.
Speech can be violent. What you are saying contributes to systemic racism in this country.
We will live in a world that we're already very close to, where anyone who speaks about the COVID lab leak hypothesis from the Wuhan laboratory could be jailed for daring to speak out against the Ministry of Truth. Right now, you only lose your digital life. The head gets chopped off. Everything, including Holocaust denial, must be allowed. And I state that as a person whose father's parents lost 90% of their family to these horrible, horrible death camps. So why do I feel this way? Because we will suffer as a species if we disallow the heterodox views that move us forward. To give you an example, Copernicus went against the orthodoxy of the Catholic Church, stating, in fact, that the earth revolved around the sun. He was meted out punishment. He was met with scorn and derision, much like many people today that speak out against the orthodoxy of the Church of Woke and the neoliberal establishment that uses them to stay in power. We would not advance technologically as a species, which was what Copernicus's findings allowed us to do, along with everybody else that went against the narrative and was proven right. So yes, will there be noise? Yes. Will there be lies? Yes. But eventually, a view that differs from the orthodoxy will rise and better all of our lives, and the trade-off of stuffing down such views, stuffing down such statements so that we be good people according to the wokesters is not one that will benefit you or your children. So the question that you have to ask is, do you, as the human race, for your children, want to fall victim to the top-down orthodoxy that they wish to impose?
Speech can be violent. What you are saying contributes to systemic racism in this country.
Because that is what this leads to, and that is what is at risk and already taking place. Guys, if you like this video, please thumb it up and share it with a friend. And if you're new to the channel, subscribe and hit the all notification bell if you do. Have a fantastic day and speak your mind, laddie. Ciao.